Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio. My next guest is a man who I have unlimited admiration for. It's been my privilege through a 45-year career in public affairs to know presidents, governors, generals, congressmen, senators, and others. But I have never known a finer man, a finer patriot, a finer Christian gentleman, and a more brilliant geopolitical thinker than General Michael Flynn. General Flynn retired as a lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, and of course he served as the U.S. National Security Advisor under President Donald Trump. General Flynn's military career includes key roles in shaping U.S. counterterrorism strategy and dismantling the insurgent networks in Afghanistan and Iraq. He has also performed numerous combat arms, conventional, and special operations senior intelligence assignments. There is a new biographical documentary out entitled, aptly, Flynn. You can get it at flynnmovie.com, flynnmovie.com. It's an amazing piece of work because it not only tells you what happened to General Flynn and his family, but more importantly, it tells you why it happened. General Flynn, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, thank you so much for giving me some time here this morning and today. And I just appreciate that introduction. Thank you so much. It's been an honor knowing you as well, and being in this fight with you to really get the truth out and to help save this country. I mean, we're in a tough spot, and I think everybody feels it. I think it's undeniable. There's not only the domestic situation, but the emerging global situation that's going on. And I think for today, maybe we talk a little bit about the G7 if you want to. I mean, just some of the outcomes of that particular summit, and some of these multilateral and bilateral activities that our country, our government, President Biden is getting us involved in, will impact this country, I think, in a negative way for potentially for years, for certainly the next decade. So. Anyway, we're really in some spot today, and I appreciate you giving me some time to talk to your great audience.
Well, I think the G7 is an excellent place to start. Most people, see the headline; they don't really realize what is happening. I, for one, am concerned about the fact that our representative in these talks seems to be, to have a diminished mental capacity. I don't know that he is standing up for the United States, but. I'm going to let you talk about this. I wanted to have you on the show today because I think our country faces danger as never before. And I do believe that the answer to this is to educate the American people, to inform the American people. People despite the lies and the obfuscation and the distortion in the mainstream media, I find that people are waking up. So tell us about the G7.
Yeah, and so on that specific note about people waking up, I have gone around this country now, and you have traveled in some cases with me or been in some of these events, but I have personally gone around this country at least 3 times now in the last 3 to 4 years, and people are definitely waking up. I mean, they're waking up even more, and I think in this past year, we've seen that. I've seen that certainly personally even more. I mean, so the G7 summit, and you were right to point out, Biden's basically his mental faculties or his inability to be able to perform at any level. I mean, it's beyond concerning. It's scary because this is the president of the United States of America. They're supposed to be, the United States should be the world leader still. We are as a nation. We are not as the representative leader that we do have in the White House in the Oval Office. Now he's sitting over in this G7 is not. He is not he's clearly not leading anything. He's hardly able to get himself to wherever he's got to go to the next appointment. I mean, it's so sad. So what is happening? And I think sort of strategically, we're in this period of prolonged societal conflict. I mean, we've been at war now if you want to go back and really tie it together, we've been at war since the end of World War II, but in the last 2 decades alone, we have been engaged in conflict either in Central Asia, principally Afghanistan, the Middle East, principally Iraq, and since 2014, because 2014 is when Russia attacked Ukraine initially under the Obama administration was when Russia first attacked. They attacked in February of 2014, and they took over Crimea and the eastern provinces of Ukraine. And now we see the G7, these leaders are getting together, and what usually comes out of a summit like this are a bunch of different or new or they stamp old treaties or alliances that have existed from the past. And one of the things that it is very clear, and the final reports haven't been written yet from this particular summit, but as they get written, the clear evidence is that the United States of America, under the administration of Joe Biden, is essentially destroying the fabric of leadership of the United States of America. And they're doing it in a very, he's doing it in a very public way, not only from his physical inabilities, but the kinds of things and the kinds of bilateral and multilateral deals that are being cut and discussions that they are having. I mean, one of which is, Biden just signed with Zelensky, who is a thug. He just signed President Zelensky of Ukraine, which is a corrupt nation filled with corruption. I mean, you can start with child trafficking, weapons trafficking, human trafficking, drug smuggling, money laundering. I mean, these are all the kinds of things that Ukraine has always been known for, and it's been used as by many, many nations and by many criminal organizations for years, for decades. One of those criminal organizations is the Biden family. Sorry, folks, but that's a fact. Those are things that we know of, and that's just one aspect of one political family. Never mind, there's a lot of other political hands that are in the cookie jar of Ukraine. So we just signed a 10-year military-to-military deal where the United States of America, for the next 10 years, we're going to continue to provide Ukraine weaponry, okay, and training and all the accoutrements that come with a military-to-military relationship. That's very, very dangerous. While, it's one thing to do something like that to strengthen a nation's military and to get them to be more in line with the ways that we train and teach different militaries around the world. But it's another thing to do it when there's a war being waged, okay? And the consequence of that, and Putin, they all knew that this was going to happen. They knew. These people know. They're very smart. They're inside of our government. They're inside of our decision-making processes. They're inside of our State Department. They're inside of the European Union. They're inside of the NATO decision-making bodies, okay? the world of infiltration and the world that we live in, we can't sit back and think that these people don't know. So Russia knew all these things were going to occur. So a consequence of that, and this is where people in this country need to understand, because it is very visible, even though the big major corporate media are not necessarily reporting on it the way that they should be. But the consequence of an action in Ukraine is a reaction by Russia here in our own hemisphere. Now I'm talking about the Russian fleet, elements of a Russian fleet that is sitting in probably Havana Harbor or certainly off the coast of Cuba. And they have not only warships, combat-ready warships, but they also have submarines, which is a type of ship, and those submarines are nuclear. And, it's ridiculous to think, because there was a statement out of Russia the other day that said, well, those nuclear subs, don't worry, they don't have any nuclear weapons in them, because why? Because they got them off of our coast. Anybody would be a fool to believe that statement. So those nuclear submarines are not going to leave the Baltic Sea of Northern Europe and come into the Atlantic without being fully prepared. So we have a reaction by Russia, and this is really where it becomes dangerous, because this is, Roger, you and you've written about actually the Cuban Missile Crisis in a great book that you wrote about Kennedy. You touched on it. This time right now, with the way the Russians have responded, is far greater threat to America than the Cuban Missile Crisis ever was. And I want people that are listening to your show understand that. The reason why is that these are not weapon systems, so the tactics of it, the military component of it, these are not weapon systems that can range Miami. These are weapon systems that can range Iowa, okay, and Nebraska. So now we have Russian military naval forces off of our coast that are in my assessment, presenting a very dangerous option for Russia to apply and to take it to another level. I want your audience to understand that the alliance between Russia and China is as strong as it's ever been. In 2012, I'm going to take everybody back a little over a decade. In 2012, the Russians and the Chinese signed one of the biggest military agreements in the history of military agreements. Okay, so over a decade ago, and then they've reestablished that military alliance between those two nations since that time and strengthened it. And they've done joint training, they've done joint exercises. They have, the Chinese are providing Russia weapon systems, just like we're providing weapon systems to Ukraine. So at a level of scale, we are now talking about the real potential for a world war, physical world war that we have not experienced, in our lifetime. Certainly, maybe in the lifetime of still some of those great patriots that are still alive, maybe that stormed the beaches of Normandy that we just celebrated the 80th anniversary the other day, and our illustrious president couldn't handle that stage presence. So I don't want to joke about this. I don't want to kid our audience. I don't want to kid your audience, your great audience, and I know, and you're a very serious guy, and we like to kid each other, but I don't want to kid about this. I don't want to joke, Biden's ability to understand what he's doing on a minute-by-minute basis, because the consequence of us having Joe Biden in the White House right now and operating over in this G7 summit where they have to lead him around by the hand is detrimental to the lifeblood of the United States of America. And I mean that, and I'm being very precise in the use of my language here this morning, today with you and your great audience as we chat on, I think it's 77 ABC, right? It's a great
WABC. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to General Michael Flynn, who was the 24th United States National Security Advisor. General Flynn, do you not think that the the Russian nuclear submarines in the Gulf of Mexico is not a direct reaction to the decision by our State Department and our Defense Department to allow U.S. missiles to be used to hit targets inside Russia that happened roughly 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it is a direct response. And this is what people need to understand, because like we say in the military, the enemy has a vote. And so the way that Putin has voted and the way that Russia has voted is they basically just put a card down on the table, a big card, and it's in the presence of naval forces, offensive military capabilities right here in our homeland arena. And so the response by Russia, their vote, was to say, okay, you want to mess around in Ukraine, you want to give them offensive weapons that they're now using, rockets. These are rockets that they're now using, that Ukraine is now using against Russia in Russia's homeland, given by the United States. And these are very sophisticated weapons that we gave to Ukraine. So the people that are operating them, I have no information that there are U.S. forces operating those weapon systems, but I can guarantee that they are contracted capabilities, contracted capabilities, because these are very sophisticated weapons that you just can't train somebody, like training somebody how to shoot a 9mm or an M4. You can train somebody on that in a day. You cannot do that with these weapon systems. And the ability to move, shoot, and communicate a very sophisticated weapon system takes time. In some cases, with weapons like this, particularly when you have language barriers, you've got all kinds of other training issues, it can take months. So there are people operating these weapon systems that are, the likelihood, are not Ukrainian, okay? So I just leave that on the table. So Russia's response is easy. They'll destroy those in a heartbeat, because they're easily discoverable on a tactical battlefield, especially in Ukraine, especially with the capabilities that a nation state like Russia has. But Russia's response, very, very smart, strategic response, if you're looking at it from the enemy's perspective, was to say, okay, you want to muck around still, America, here in Ukraine? We're going to muck around in your neighborhood, and here's where we are. And they blatantly, and very publicly, very transparently, have placed a Russian naval offensive capabilities right here. And like I just said, capabilities can range. It's not just ranging the Sarasota or Tampa or Miami or Naples or whatever. It's to range Iowa. Okay, that's the capability that we now have, and these are very, very sophisticated. And trust me, these are people that are well trained. So their forces are Russian forces are very capable. So let me just, if I have a minute here, I want to kind of array what does the U.S. have to stop this kind of stuff. So we have our Navy, we have our Army, we have our Air Force, we have our Marines. So our Navy and our Army can't even make recruiting right now, because we have a lack of trust by the American people in our military. Our Navy right now is so stressed over in the Mediterranean, dealing with the situation in the Middle East, and frankly the situation up in Ukraine inside the Black Sea. So I need people, your audience, to pull out a map. So our Navy is present in the Mediterranean. Our Navy is present in a big way still in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea, to basically protect the littorals of the commercial transportation that comes in and out of that part of the world. Our Navy is arrayed over in the Pacific right now because of the threat that China is posing to the Taiwan Straits. And God knows what our response will be if China decides to roll into Taiwan, which they could do in a second, in a moment's notice. So our Navy is arrayed there. Our Navy also has to be arrayed in other parts of the world to protect our own commercial activities, right? That's why they're out there. So they're in the Indian Sea, they're in the South China Sea, they're in the Atlantic. I mean, that is a stretched Navy, and our Navy, our carrier fleet, we don't have that many. So we don't have like what we used to have under the days of Reagan, when we had 20 aircraft carriers that were at sea, that could be put at sea in a heartbeat. We don't have that capability. And when I say 20 aircraft carriers, these are aircraft carrier battle groups. So, I don't know how much detail we get into, that your audience wants to take, but I want the audience to understand that the enemy has a vote, and Russia has voted to operate in our hemisphere. Let me add one more second, and I'll throw it back to you, Roger, if you have any questions. The other thing that we are facing is right here in our homeland. Okay, we are facing a terror threat. We are facing a potential coordinated effort by Russia and China for groups here in the United States of America. So we already know that the Chinese work very closely with the Mexican cartels. And of course, I'll just use one, MS-13 here in the United States. They're all over the country. But these gangs that are operating inside of the country, and there are large numbers of Russian gangs and Russian organizations. There's Chinese gangs and Chinese organizations here in the homeland. So if you have Chinese-made fentanyl and it's introduced by the Mexican cartels, so that tells you right there that the Chinese are allied with these organizations that are operating on our turf right now. Russia and China have as close a relationship as in any time in their history that they've ever had, military to military, and certainly economically. And so they are both, those two nation states, Russia and China, trust me, they are operating in our homeland, and they will align themselves with whoever will give them an advantage against us. And so when we have this feckless, clueless, arrogant level of quote unquote leadership inside of our administration, in the State Department, in the Department of Defense, in the Department of Commerce, and certainly in the White House, in the national security system, within the intelligence community, which we do have right now, we are in a place of grave danger. The United States of America. Yeah,
let me just hold you up there for 1 second, General. We're talking to General Michael Flynn on the Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back for a final segment with General Michael Flynn.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a Real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a Real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your Real ID at tsa.gov/RealID. That's tsa.gov/RealID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. We're talking to General Michael Flynn, a retired United States Army Lieutenant General who served as the 24th U.S. National Security Advisor under President Donald Trump. As I said earlier, his career included key roles in shaping U.S. counterterrorism and strategy, and also helping to dismantle the insurgent networks in both Afghanistan and Iraq. We are honored to have him. General, I'm sorry I interrupted you. There is so much to cover. It's really hard. Let me throw this out to you. Look, I think you love the U.S. Army. The only two things I know that you love more are your country and your family. I know how you love the U.S. Army. I've seen you with veterans. It is heartwarming. What's the current condition of our military?
Yeah, so our Army right now and the military at large, and I think the military overall is reflected in the status and state of play of our United States Army. And our Army has not met its recruiting goals and is not likely to meet its recruiting goals. Is really, really dangerous for the United States of America because that is a critical national security capability, right? The United States Army. The Army readiness rates are where they need to be. They're low, actually. The supply of the type of armaments that we would need is low. We have an Army that has come off of 20-plus years of fighting terrorists over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and has to refit, retool while we are facing massive manpower shortages, as well as the deficits that we have as a nation, the $33 or $34 trillion that we have. does affect our ability to be able to rearm, refit, reman, repurpose our Army to be able to handle the types of conflicts that we are likely to get ourselves involved in here. And one of those conflicts could be on the European plains. It could be right here at home, as I just described. So our Army is not in, if you think about a body being in good shape, right, being a healthy body, our Army is not a healthy body right now. And in fact, it's very weak. Now the Secretary of Defense and the generals and admirals of our Navy and all these other and our other forces, the Air Force, the Marines, they're all going to stand there and go, "Oh, we're ready. We're ready to fight." Hey, folks, we just lost 2 wars, really. I mean, 2 conflicts. Afghanistan, we retreated under fire, and Iraq, we didn't fare much better. Now, that's not to take away from the great men and women who served, sacrificed their lives, and we sacrificed so much treasure in Iraq and Afghanistan, and of course, those theaters of war. But we have the political decision makers are driving our forces to focus more on social emotional learning and critical race theory than on training and preparation for war, and also a winning attitude, a winning culture. That's the other aspect of our Army and our military. We have to stop focusing on these nonsensical societal, cultural forms of development that we don't need. We have a military to do one thing: to fight and win. Keyword win our nation's wars, and to be prepared to do that. And right now we are not. And it kills me to say that. And the veterans that I know will be listening to this show, they know exactly what I'm talking about, folks. This is undeniable. So where do we? I know we only got a couple of minutes. Where do we go from here? Because we certainly lack transparency coming out of our government. We lack accountability. We have all these problems. And, and most people sit there and they go, Jesus, what can I do? Right. And so I think what we need to do as citizens is we need to get engaged in our communities. I mean, if there's nothing else you can do, if you feel, an inability to control, your ability to talk to your congressman or to talk to your state representative or to talk to your mayor or your councilman because you don't know them, there's other ways for people to get involved in their communities. And, your audience is a national, certainly a national, if not an international audience. So a lot of people around the country are listening to you right now, and I appreciate that audience because that audience is an active audience. The more active we can be in our communities in this country right now, and the more we're pushing our message of, look, we cannot have this type of leadership running our country any longer. They are systematically and I strongly believe that they are intentionally destroying the fabric of our society in order to change our society from a constitutional republic to a socialist republic. And I mean that. And when I say socialist republic, that means toward communism. So these are the kinds of things that happen. So we have to raise our voices. We have to use the local platforms that we have. We have to stand up and speak out. We have to engage peacefully. We have to engage professionally. We have to engage politically. Nobody can keep saying, or everybody has to stop saying, well, those politicians, they're all corrupt, whatever. No, we've been saying that too long. The complacency of the American people, and I'll use a stronger word, the laziness of the American people to allow these long in the tooth politicians run our country into has to end. That's why I'm a big supporter of President Donald J. Trump, because he was a guy that wasn't involved in politics, at the level of running until he decided and he saw this country was being destroyed, and he loves this country. So he stepped up and he got involved. And you look at what happens to people when they step up to help, right? That they love this country, and all you want to do is you want to serve it and you want to help move the country forward in a positive direction. Well, you see what they did to me. You see what they did to you. You see what they're doing to Donald J. Trump. And so President Trump, he's going to continue to stand his ground, and really be that pointy end of the spear, so to speak, to represent America and represent what we should be known as, which is that shining city hill that Reagan, highlighted, that true, North Star, right? That beacon of light out there for the rest of the world to admire, but we do it in a humbly way. And I think that America still, I believe that the grassroots of Americans out there, they still firmly believe that. As we said at the very beginning, people are waking up, and that's what we need more of. And I want people to get involved as we roll into the November election. I want people to really, really pay attention in their own local communities. Get out there and do whatever you can do, but by God, get out and vote. So I'll leave it at that, Roger. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we've been talking to General Michael Flynn. Again, a great new documentary film, Flynn, which tells not only what happened to General Flynn and his family, but more importantly, why it happened. It's a very powerful piece of filmmaking. I really urge you to see it. You can go to flynnmovie.com and check that out, flynnmovie.com. Thank you, General Michael Flynn, for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
God bless, Roger. Thank you, and thank your audience, please. Thank you.